Hey everyone, how's it going? So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about not just one of the greatest, but the greatest multi-track live recording I've ever gotten. Let's get right into it. So first, I should tell you about the band that we are working with. They are called Dream of the Archer, and they have been featured on my channel a couple of times. Once with one of my live front of house streams, another one where I vlogged about my experience doing a gig with them at a brewery, which is where, spoilers, this is the venue of which we are going to be working with tonight, the multi-tracks from this gig. And also, I actually went over a live stream finalizing the mix of this very multi-track session. So we have quite a few appearances with this band on the channel, and we're going to have 2 more counting this video. So in the description, you'll see everything. So let's go over a couple of things real quick. So this is a Heart tribute band, and they are from the greater Queens, New York area. At least that's where they rehearse, so I'm just basing their home base off of that. Let's go over a couple of things that are from the gig. I mean, you can watch the entire vlog of the gig. I'll put it in the description if you want to see more detail. But let's go over some basic things real quick. So this was done at Tin Bar Brewing Company. I forget what town in New York, but this is the stage right here. This is what we're working with, and we had only two PA speakers, no subs, but we really didn't need that. So we have a couple of inputs here that we're going to be working with. I'll show you the multi-track in a minute. But in essence, we have a DI bass, a DI guitar. We have a mic'd guitar, and there's a close-up of it right there. I'm using the Sennheiser E906 and the drum kit. Let's rewind that just a second or two to take a look at it. So right here we have a Beta 57A. We have the MD421 compacts on the toms, Audix D6 on the kick. We have a Octava MK012 on the hi-hat. And when my stupid ass looks at the overheads, there they are. That is the Lewitt LC-T140 Airs that we're using for overheads. Bass was DI. Stage right guitar, which is right behind me right here. That is DI as well, and we had one mic'd guitar. We had a DI keyboard that was a mono track, and we had 2 vocals, our Ann and Nancy Wilson. Now, before I get into this, I need to make something abundantly clear with a lot of you newbies who are watching this. Do not copy everything that I'm doing. Like, don't copy exactly what I'm doing, because what worked for me with this mix won't necessarily work for you and your mix. I'm just showing you what I did, the decisions I make, and what techniques I used to get the final results that I got. So again, don't copy every single thing that I did, because it will most likely sound like garbage. And yeah, that's really the only disclaimer. This was recorded in a very large room, a very large metal room with a stone floor, metal ceilings and walls, so there's a lot of natural room reverb. And let's just get right into it. All right, guys. So here is the finished mix. This is everything on, and this is exactly what I sent to the band. So this was the final result. Let's go over each track and what it is again one more time. So we have a kick drum track. That is the Audix D6. We have the snare. That's a Beta 57A. Hat. That is a Octava MK012. 2 toms. Those are the MD421 compacts. We have 2 overheads. Like I said, Lewitt 140 Airs. We have a bass DI. Guitar stage right, that is DI'd. Guitar stage left, that is a Sennheiser E906. Keys are DI, and then we have our Ann and Nancy Wilson. I honestly don't remember what microphones they used. They weren't 58s, so I know they were Shores. I honestly don't remember. So they're good Shure vocal mics. And then we have a room mic, which is a mic I am talking into right now. This is the Basin BMS2. This just captured the room, and these two were the left and right board mix that I just recorded just as a backup in case anything else failed. So we're going to be focusing on the raw tracks. Obviously, we do not need the board mix, and the song we're going to be focused on today is their cover of Heart's cover, which, by the way, I just recently learned that Alone is not a Heart original song, which is crazy. I thought that was an original Heart song, but it's not. It's a cover, and I didn't know that. So I guess we could listen to where the toms are actually hitting. Let's make the waves a little bit bigger here so you can see them. So here we go. Here's a tom fill right here. So I'll play from here. Let's turn everything off so you can hear exactly what we're starting out with, and then I will explain everything one by one of what I'm doing so you guys can follow along. Okay, let's I'm going to raise the master just a little bit here just so it's a little bit louder. We're going to go into what looks like the end of the final chorus here. So this is completely raw, what it sounds like. Okay, so I don't want to play too much here because of YouTube's stupid copyright system. I don't want the copyright Gestapo coming after me. So we are only going to hear like the bare minimum samples here. So just we got to deal with it because that's just how YouTube's stupid copyright system works. All right, so you've heard me harp about this long enough on this channel. But the one thing that I always do with every live multi-track session that I have is I install Auto Align. And for this, I took every raw multi-track that we have in the session here, and I just let Auto Align do its thing. So what this does is it monitors the phase alignment. It monitors all of the phase correlation, and it basically makes everything sound like it's fluid and nice and smooth together. So it's witchcraft. I love this thing. And it sure as hell beats having to zoom in and literally move all of the waveforms, like even a sample here, a sample there, to perfectly align, flipping the phase manually to see if it works. So it's definitely it's definitely a must-buy plugin. So we heard it raw. So now let me put on Auto Align on everything. As my cat destroys shit in the background. Okay, so Auto Align is on, and then now let's hear what that does to the mix. The low end is so much more prominent, and it's so much more defined. So, yeah, for those of you who are going to inevitably comment that the stage left guitar is lower than stage right, I know. It's just when I turn everything on, the levels will get much better. I'm just not adjusting this and have to, bring it back down when I turn everything on. So that is Auto Align. So let's start with the drums, right? Because that's literally the most important part about this whole thing. And now, because it's a Heart tribute band, and because it's very 70s like, 70s, 80s, I want this to sound as warm as possible. What I mean by that is, if you want to talk about it sonically, a warm sounding mix is very smooth sounding upper mids and highs, right? Like, it's not sharp and nothing's going to pop out at you. And unlike metal bands that have very crunchy, like aggressive upper mid and high end guitars, this is very smooth. So that's how I define what a warm mix is. I'm sure there are other people that have different definitions. There's a lot of stuff going on in the mix here, but really there's not a lot of like actual changes to the sound. So let's start with the kick drum. So what I have the silencer, which is the best noise gate I ever used. And there's going to be a lot of repetitive patterns here, guys. So I just want to make that clear here. I have the Universal Audio Neve 1073. I have a Pro Q3, and this is taking out a very aggressive 5.5 dB, very low Q of 164. There's just a lot of ugly buildup there, and I want the kick drum to be a little more clean. So then I have the SSL4KE from SSL. Then I have the drum leveler, and then I have another Pro Q3. This is just a blend with the bass, so pay attention to this. So when I go to the bass, I'll explain what this does. All right, guys, so let's go over with the kick drum. I have the silencer from Black Salt Audio, and this is just the best drum noise gate I ever heard. It's awesome, and it works wonders. Then I have the Universal Audio 1073 from Neve, taking out a little bit of 360 and slightly boosting the top end. I do not have a high-pass filter because I have one on the SSL, but I'll get to that in a second. There was a lot of buildup of low-mid mud here. So I took out 5.5 dB at around 164 with a very low Q. So I want to make room for the bass guitar right here, because this is where a lot of the fundamental notes of the bass guitar were, for at least how this bass was tuned and how the songs that they were playing. So you'll hear a lot of grooving bass tone coming from this range. So I don't want it in a kick drum. Then let's go to my the main EQ and the workhorse of this whole entire signal flow. I don't have any other compressor activated on this channel. I want to keep as much in one setting as possible, because again, if I'm going for a very clicky, very punchy, like gut-punching kick drum that you would hear in like a Lamb of God song or whatever, I'd probably do more than this. But for this mix and this band, I wanted something to be just cleaned up, a little bit of adding, some punch to it. And, I wanted to just make it pleasant. Like, there's going to be some audio, engineers that are watching this and are going like, what do you mean by pleasant, dude? It just sounds pleasant when, when this turns on and you hear all the changes I made. So here is how I have my signal flow going from the SSL. So let's start with the filters. I do not have a low pass filter, and here is what's going to trigger all of you right now. There's going to be all of you going and just freak out in the comments. I am high passing my kick drum at 94.5 hertz because I want the bass guitar to have almost everything below 100 hertz. That's just how I like mixing. That's how I like my sound. And for a band such as this, you do not need all of the sub frequencies in the kick drum. You just don't need them. You want something. Now, people are going to look at this and they're going to be like, well, how aggressive is the curve here? It's not as aggressive as, let's say, if I used it on the Pro Q3 here, but it's aggressive enough where if I brought this down to like 30 or whatever, between 30 and I A and B it from 30 to 70, you will not hear that much of a difference. This is a very light, I'm pretty sure it's a 4 or 6 dB per octave curve here. At least that's the way it sounds to me. But anyway, I don't EQ and I don't do anything just based on numbers. I do it based on, does it sound good? Right? Because that's how you're supposed to do this. When I was mixing this, I A and B'd this on and off and with the mix and versus with the drums versus with the whole band. And it sounds great. So just hold your angry comments until you actually hear it. So the only thing else I'm doing with the EQ is taking out 6.5 dB at 510 hertz with a 1.9, let's just say 2 Q. Then here comes the compressor. I have a 4 ratio, and I have a very fast release. The attack, I would say, is around 20-something milliseconds. I'm sure I could look at the owner's manual, but I didn't want to have a second compressor on this. I wanted to just, like, contain and nicely balanced. And I'm taking out between 3 and 6 dB gain reduction right here. Then I go to the drum leveler. This is to basically cure drummers who hit their drums inconsistently with velocity. So I have a very light compression ratio here, and what this does is basically take the kick drum and any low hit here, it raises it to get to around here. Any really aggressive hit here, it reduces it to get somewhere in this range here. This is so the drum has a consistent level of overall volume. And then I go to another instance of the Pro Q3, and this is boosting 60 hertz at around 3 dB, and this is taking out an additional 3 dB around 120. And this is just to blend with the bass guitar, and I'll explain more of that when I get to the bass. But I'm sure all of you who are probably waiting to flame me in the comments because of how I high pass the kick drum at 95 hertz are ready to hear what a difference it makes. Now, I'm going to play it solo, but keep in mind, you are not mixing so the solo track sounds good. You mix so it sounds good with everything else going on, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn everything on with the track soloed, and then I'm going to A and B all these effects off with the drum bus, so you can hear what it sounds like pre and post with all the drums. So I'm going to shut up now and just turn everything on one by one so you can hear the difference between raw and processed. Suddenly, I don't sound too crazy, right? Again, you are mixing. When you're mixing a whole band playing live, you have to balance the levels with both the individual tracks, the instrument bus, and how it sounds with the rest of the band. So every decision that I made here, I A and B'd it solo with the drum bus and with everything else. So let's move on to the snare drum. And we're going to go through the process a little more quickly here, just because we got a lot of stuff to do here. So you're going to see again, you're going to see sort of the same kind of plugins that I've been using. And you're going to see stuff that I've used before on this channel. You're going to see stuff that I've seen that I've used in the live stream. And you're going to see a lot of repeated elements here. So the snare drum. Let's start with the silencer. Then I move to the 1073. I'm boosting a little bit more of the high end here, taking out a little more 360, and I'm boosting 220 and with a high pass filter of 160. Then with the Pro Q3, I'm taking out just a little bit of 900 hertz with a 7.8 Q around 1.5 dB. There was just a little bit there that was not to my liking. Then let's go to the SSL4KE. Again, filters, EQ, dynamics in order. So in order, let's start with filters. I had a low pass at around 9.4K. And I do not have a high pass filter on here because I have it on the Neve, which this is a much more aggressive high pass filter than the SSL. Let's go to EQ. So with this, I'm boosting at 8K, 1.5 dB. I'm boosting 2.1K, 1.5 dB. And I'm cutting 430 hertz at a little over 3 dB with a very tight Q. And I have a pretty broad range of Q, 1.5 on my upper mids here. Then let's go to compressor. Again, 4 ratio, fast release. This is going to be the same for all the drums. And I'm only taking out enough so it takes out 3 and just barely touches 6 dB of gain reduction. Then let's go to one of my favorite tricks in the book to get a nice snare drum. I love the gated reverb from SSL. This is just a very simple gated reverb. And here are my settings. You can take a look at this yourself and copy all the settings. Time is 1 second. Color is 50. Retro 30. Density 100. Size 30. Pre-delay is 72 milliseconds because I want all the transient of the initial track to come through before the gated reverb comes on. Trigger is just to, it's basically, it acts like a threshold. And then mix is 28% wet. Then, again, finishing off with drum leveler. 34% compression ratio. And again, same thing with the kick drum. Just taking inconsistent hits and putting them at an average volume. So I'm going to do the same thing I did with the kick drum. Solo, so you hear just a snare track, and then I'll do it with the drum bus. So let's start with just a snare track. All right, let's move on to the hi-hat. And the hi-hat is very simple. Like, this is the easiest track to mix here. So the hi-hat, all I did was have the 1073. I high-passed it to 300 hertz. And then on the SSL EQ, I have just very light compression. And again, just enough so it barely hits 3 dB gain reduction. I put a low pass filter of 11K. Again, just to take care of those very teeny aggressive, really aggressive highs. And I also want the overheads to have all those frequencies above 11,000. So I'm boosting from 5.9 up, a little over 1. Not doing anything with this band. And I'm taking out 60 hertz, around 2 dB with a tight Q. And that is it. So, let's see. Is there a point in the song where he is hitting the hi-hat? I mean, it's a hi-hat, so there's really not much to do with that. It's minus 22.5. Let's bring that back down to where it was. Now comes the part where you guys are going to be very interested in what I did with the toms, because the toms sound so nice and warm in this final product, and the toms sound great as is. So, let's go over what I did with the toms. So let's start with the rack tom. Again, silencer, Neve. You're going to see a pattern here, guys. Have you seen it yet? Guess what's next? That's right, the SSL. Then, here's where things get a little fun. Virtual mix rack from Slate. Then, here's what gets even more fun. UAD distressor. And we're finishing up with drum leveler. So let's start one by one of where everything goes. Let's turn this off here so you can hear everything in order. Okay, so let's start with the silencer. Again, straightforward. You know that by now. Neve. High pass at 60. Boosting a lot at 110. Pretty cranked a little bit. So anyone who uses any 1073, like the real unit or any plugin, boosting this much, that's a big boost right there. Cutting at 360 and just slightly boosting the high-end shelf. Next, let's go to the SSL 4K. High pass, low pass filtering at 7.6. No high pass filter on this because I already have it on the Neve. I have the bell curve at 8, boosted 3 dB. I am boosting 2.1K at almost 2 dB with a very broad, wide Q here. I'm reducing over 7 dB of 520 hertz with a sort of tight Q here, and I am reducing 200 hertz at -2 because I want the 200 hertz range to be where the snare drum is. I want the fatness from the snare to cut through, so I want 200 hertz to be fat ass snare territory. Well, now let's go to compression. 4 ratio. Threshold, I brought it down to -1. Again, just bring down the threshold, so a fast release, so it's just kissing. Next, let's go over to one of my favorite, signal flows to work with here. This is the transient sharpener. I just like how the Slate one sounds. I mean, there's other transient sharpeners that you can use. I just like how the Slate one sounds. Then I wanted even more fatness from the toms, so I put it through the FG Bomber. Intensity is at 50, and I just go to drive until it hits the bomb in the middle, and it sounds awesome. Then I boosted a little more in present mode, boosted a little bit on the high lift, and I boosted punchy around, I'd say, around the 3 dot mark here. Again, just until it sounds good. Then I go to the distressor. 4-1, and this is when I'm pretty aggressively compressing here. Sort of fast attack, fast release. Again, getting between 4 to 6 dB gain reduction. And I do not have any of the other high pass filter selection. I don't have any of the distortion selected. I'm just using this as the compressor. Then we're ending it with 50% compression ratio in drum leveler. Again, just so the levels are consistent. Next, let's go to the floor tom. And before any of you complained that I didn't do A and B dry with adding everything on, with the drum bus, I will do that when I show you the floor tom. All right, floor tom signal flow. Almost there with the drums, guys. Not even gonna, like, you know my signal flow at this point, so like you should pick up by now where everything is. Again, floor tom, except for this instance of the Pro Q, it's the same exact signal flow as the rack tom. Literally the same exact one. So the only difference is, come on, drum leveler. Get up. There you go. Again, same thing. I'm not boosting the high end on the 1073, and I have a high pass at 50, but everything else is pretty much the same. On the SSL, pretty much the same signal flow, same settings, pretty much. I'm taking out 9 dB of 450 hertz. And I'm also taking out 200. So this is the only difference really between the floor and the rack. The drummer of the band tuned his toms wonderfully, so I didn't really have to do that much like crazy tuning with it. But there was a lot of build up here around 120. And again, I want the bass to have this area too. So I took out just a little bit to just ease the aggressiveness of this frequency area of the tom. Again, virtual mix rack, transient sharpener, FG bomber, custom series lift, into the distressor, into the drum leveler. So let's go to an area of the song where he actually hits the tom like hard. All right, so let's see what that sounds like. All right, now I'm going to go to the whole tom fill here, and I'm going to A and B everything raw with the toms, and then I'm going to turn everything on. So here's everything off, and then I'll A and B everything with it on. I have the toms and the snare going to a bus here called ST Verb. And what I did with that is I have the Sound City Studios reverb chamber, and I have a basic EQ. So I'll wait for this to load. The toms I'm sending to this bus at, I believe I'm sending them to, yeah, it looks like I'm sending everything at full strength. And I am sending pre-fader of the snare drum. So I'm using the reverb in, I'm using the Sound City Studios in reverb mode, not remic mode. Remic is something you would do to the overheads. But I like the reverb sound. So I have all 3 sections of microphones going because I want this to sound as airy as possible. So to go over to settings real quick, I have my close mic, which is a C12 model, Room 1 U67 model in 360 pattern. Then the KM84 Room 2 and cardioid pattern. The dynamics are pretty cool. The 1176N, from what I understand, is the compressor that was used by the Sound City Studios board. So I'm pretty sure I'm wrong on that. I'm sure someone in the comments is gonna say what this is modeled after, but all I know is the 1176N is modeled from one of the pieces of gear at Sound City. So I have that compressed, and I have a little bit more of a chamber effect to just give it even more reverb. I have this on wet solo, so the signal going into it is just the reverb. And then I have a EQ, stock Logic EQ here, just a very aggressive high pass and low pass filter. So it's just the mid range. I don't want low end reverb, and I don't want high end reverb. And I have another heavy scoop here around 615 just to help reduce the buildup of all the muddiness that was right here. So let's solo this track, and then everything else is on. So you should hear just the snare and the toms go into this, and then I'll turn everything on. And then here's that bus. Here's a whole drum bus with this off versus with it on. Right, so it's a very subtle difference, but it makes a difference. Finally, let's go to the overheads. The overheads are very simple. We have the 1073. Again, taking out 360. And I'm boosting the highs just slightly. I have 160 high pass. All right, let's go to the SSL. So I have a low pass filter at 15.9. Again, some people don't like putting a low pass filter on their overheads. Again, it all depends on what it sounds good. It just sounded a little too brittle, and I just put a little bit on there, and that cleaned it up a little bit. I don't have a high pass filter on because I have it right here. And the only EQ that I'm doing is taking out 3.5 dB at 580 with a very tight Q. Dynamics, again, just enough to graze -3 dB gain reduction. But here's where the magic of the overheads are. I have an 1176. I have the attack set to 7. And I have the release set between 5 and 6. And I do enough just so I get a little significant gain reduction there. So I'm going to turn everything on in order. And then you guys get to hear what the overheads sound like, and then I'll A and B it with the drum bus. I should also point out that the mix knob on the 1176 here is set to roughly 20%. So if I crank this mix knob all the way up and turn this on, it would just sound ridiculously overcompressed. There's just a little bit of parallel compression. So again, just wanted to point that out. All right, let's do a and B with all the drums. Oh, I forgot to show you what I did here with the drum bus. So 1 and 7 classic, slow attack, fast release. I have the ratio at 12. And I have the mix knob set to roughly 30 to 35%. And again, just looking for a nice parallel compression here. So I'm going to play this section again with it off and then with it on. All right, now let's go to all the drums, raw versus everything on. Here's everything off, and then I'll put everything on. Right? What a difference that makes. Let's move on to bass. And bass is incredibly easy. It's the easiest instrument in the band to mix. The only difficult thing about bass is getting it sitting right with the kick drum. So if you know what you're doing, bass is very easy. But most people do not know how to do this right. And even then, a lot of people who do know what they're doing still don't know what they're doing. And I'm pretty sure someone is going to be a smartass and say that, pot kettle in the comments. All right, let's go over the my bass signal flow. So I have the 1073. Again, I use this preamp for basically everything. I boosted the high end just a little bit. Took out a little bit of 360. I boosted 110 a little bit there, and I took out a high pass filter at 50. And I'm sure bass players everywhere are going to go like blah, 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 blah. But I don't want all of the crazy sub low end with this. There's not. I'm gonna trigger a lot of people here, but there's not a lot for this band in this particular instance that I need below 50 hertz. This is an aggressive high pass filter, but it's not brick wall high pass filter. I'd say it's more like a 20 or 30 dB per octave. So there's a little bit between 40 and 50 here. So just don't get your panties in a bunch, bass players. The low end is still there. So Next, on the virtual mix rack, I use the Revival just to add a little more saturation in both the high and the low end. Then I have 2 instances of the distressor. One is a general compression, 4-to-1, reducing between 4 to 6 dB gain reduction, medium-ish attack, medium release, just and with the distortion on 3. This is just my main compression. Then I have another instance of the distressor. Again, 4-to-1, reducing between 1 to 3, 4 absolute max, fast attack, fast release, and this is just to maintain the initial attack transients, because I don't want the bass, like if the bass player slaps a string or whatever, I don't want it cutting through. And then we come to 2 EQs that I will bring up my bass drum EQ one more time. Remember, circling back to remembering this EQ right here. This is where this EQ is going to come into play. So I'll put the kick drum EQ right here. So I have a sidechain compression, very fast attack, fast release, no auto gain, with a 2-to-1 ratio, and taking out just 1 to 2 dB of the bass guitar whenever the kick drum hits. And then here is my final EQ. And I know people are going to go like, why did you boost the low end here if you high passing it there? I want certain things boosted between 40, 50, between 40 and 50 hertz, and I want certain things taken out. So this adds a little bit more, this adds a little bit more below the 40 and 30. So like it just has a nice sound to it. It sounds good, and I went with it. So that really is just borderline, that's my blanket answer to everything. So I'm going to go to the bass guitar here and solo the bass and play what that sounds like for you. I'm going to turn everything off. Everything is off, and then I'll turn everything on. Okay, so if you want a easy, simple trick to blend your low end together, here is a very simple, foolproof way to get your low end blended. I'm going to show you something right now before we move on here. So get yourself a frequency analyzer. Put it in RMS mode and have the decay of the waves be slow so you can see exactly where your fundamental frequencies are. Get your kick drum sounding right, and then what you do is you play the kick drum fully processed. Let's turn off your Pro EQ at the end here. So here is the kick drum. All right, so it's hovering just below 40 there. You bring in your bass now. Solo your bass. Get the bass hovering around 42. Right? So with your sidechain compression and your 2 EQs here on the bass, as well as the kick, what you're doing here, boosting at 60, take out 60 on the bass. Reducing here at 121, don't touch it on the bass. But the bass guitar here is feeling a little muddy around 180, so I took a little bit out there. And you get all of that. And then you'll get, along with obviously some fader adjustment there, you'll get a balanced low end. Right? You hear the musical, you hear the notes of the bass guitar with a nice, warm sounding bass. I'm not looking to break people's subwoofers with this mix. I'm looking for nice 70s-ish sounding warmness. That's what I want. So you don't necessarily need all of that insane sub low end. You just don't need it. And again, it's what ultimately sounded good to me. So I'm keeping it like that. Like that's literally all I can say. Like it sounded good to me, so that's what I'm rolling with. All right, let's go to guitars. The only thing I did with the DI guitar, because it sounded fucking amazing, is I put it on an SSL. So low pass at 8.7, high pass at 118. I am taking out 2 dB, around 3.2K. I'm taking out 1.5 dB at 450. And I am fast compressing 2:1 ratio. And the only time this compressor is activated and doing anything is when he goes from his main part right here into his lead tone. You see how loud of a difference that is compared to that? This is just to help tame the loudness of that. So I'll play it raw, and then I'll turn this on so you'll hear the difference. Soloed, and then with the rest of the band. You still hear a slight increase in volume, but it's not as aggressive as it was like live in the room. But it like his default tone sounds incredible. So there's really not much to do with that. Now let's go to the I didn't do the A and B with the rest of the band. So all right, so let's make sure this is pan center. And I'll mute the other guitar so you can hear the difference between what everything sounds like now. Let's mute the vocal too. So you can hear what it sounds like with the band. I'll play it without the SSL on, and then I'll play it again with it on. Let's move on to let's bring that back over, panned hard right. Hard left, I should say. I can't get my left and right. Let's go to the mic'd guitar amp. And we got a little bit going on here. Okay, let's go over what I'm doing here. So again, Neve 1073. I'm boosting the high end a little bit here. Again, taking out 360. And I'm high passing at what looks like... Okay, that's 80. I'm high passing at 80. Then, this needed some recovery in the top end and the low end here. So I have the Virtual Mix Rack Revival with the shimmer and the thickness boosted a little bit. Then I took out what I call the pain frequencies. So these are the frequencies on the guitar that really stand out to me and are a little aggressive with their sound. So I literally just clean it up to make it sound as smooth as possible. Then, to add a little more warmth, I put on the API channel strip, and I love these EQs for guitars. I love how they sound. I also have extremely light compression, 2-to-1 ratio. Again, just to help control the peaks here. So you won't see like 3 to 6 dB gain reduction because that's just crazy on a distorted guitar. And before anyone says, "Oh, you're reducing 5K on the Pro Q," I'm not. I'm reducing 4.5K. So I am boosting 5K at 2 dB, and then I'm boosting 1.5K by 6 dB. And that's about it. So let's go. Let's play the track as is, raw, and then I will play it with everything on, and then I'll add everything, add the rest of the band. Let's go to another song where it's a little more prominent. So let's go to, I believe this is Barracuda. Right? That's just an amazing difference with that. So, all right, let's go back to the song that we were working on. All right, guys, let's go to keys. Very important in Hart's catalog to have a good keyboard sound. So the keyboardist here had a very good sound to his instrument. So really all I did was just polish it up and added some reverb to it. So I have SSL4K, Distressor, and then I have the Sound City ensemble setting on the reverb with C14 model close mic. Room 1 is U67 in 360 mode, and then KM84 for room 2. Here are my settings for the reverb, and that is it as far as keyboards go. So I'll play just a solo keyboard part, which already sounds great, and we'll add everything one by one. Now let's get to the part where I think all of you are going to be beyond impressed by, and that is the vocal quality of Miranda and Jennifer, aka our Ann and Nancy Wilson. Now, in order to do Hart justice, like, your vocals have to be perfect. They have to be perfection. Because doing Ann and Nancy Wilson justice is extremely difficult to do. All right, so in order, 1073, boosting a little bit of the high end here, taking out 360, and high pass at 160. This is one of my favorite noise gates to use for mixing live multitracks, and that is the Sorcerer from SSL. Basically, this hears a certain frequency range, and it lightly cuts the signal when it hits a certain threshold. I have it on peak setting at medium release. Again, this just helps reduce the cymbal bleed in the background. But when I record live bands, I sometimes let the vocal mic and the bleed from the overheads, help my advantage there. Low pass, 8.15. No low pass filter because I already have it on the Neve. I am boosting 8 at 1.7, and I'm taking out just under 2 dB at 700 with a relatively tight Q. I am boosting 1.7 at around 145. For the compressor, 4 setting, threshold is down to 0.6. Fast release, again, between 3 and 6 dB gain reduction. Then I'm going to a de-esser and just taking out the just to help reduce the sounds in her voice. Then is my main vocal compressor, distressor, medium attack, sort of quick release, 4-1, and then to polish it off even more, fast attack, fast release of the 1176. So hopefully I don't get fucking copyright tagged, but let's hear Ann Wilson's vocal before raw and then with everything on.
Till now, I always got by on my own. I never really cared until I met you. And now it chills me to the bone. How do I get you alone? Till now, I always got by on.
I'm afraid that I'm just going to get tagged with that too because YouTube's copyright system is fucking garbage. But let's go to our Nancy Wilson. And Miranda and Jennifer have the same exact signal flow. So the only thing that I did was I adjusted based on which voice is which. So I just made micro adjustments here and there. I treated both Jennifer and Miranda's vocal as lead because most of the songs and most Heart songs, they sing duet. So I think it would only be fair to go to a Nancy Wilson song. So I'll play Nancy's part and I'll add in Ann's part when I'm done going through the signal flow here. So this is Nancy Wilson's vocal on These Dreams.
Every second of the night, I live another life. These dreams asleep when it's cold outside. Every moment I'm awake. Every second of the night, I live another life. These dreams asleep when it's cold outside. Every moment I'm awake, the further I'm away.
Yeah, these fucking girls can harmonize. Like, holy shit. Okay. So now let's stick with These Dreams for a second. So I have on the vocal reverb, the only reverb I have on the vocal, because a lot of the reverb comes from the room mic, and I'll get to the room mic in a second. But first, let's go over the vocal reverb and the buses. I forgot one thing about the guitars, so I'll get to that. Don't worry. I have vocal ensemble. I'm sorry. I have vocal on group setting in reverb mode. I have C24 in omnidirectional as a close mic. I have room 1, U67 in cardioid, and I have room 2, the KM54 in cardioid. And these are my settings for the EQ. I mean, it doesn't matter for the EQ. I'm boosting the mid on that. But everything else is redundant because I have the EQ over here. Dynamics, compressing a little bit, adding more of a chamber sound. And it's obviously on wet solo because this is its own independent bus. And then I have an EQ that takes out a little bit of the moneyness and a little bit of the aggressiveness around 2K. And that is it. So let me turn on the bus of Ann and Nancy Wilson. And then we'll hear what the reverb sounds like. And then I'll blend it in with the song.
Every second of the night, I live another life. These dreams asleep. Every second of the night, I live another life. These dreams. Every second of the night, I live another life. These dreams asleep. Every second of the night, I live another life. These dreams.
Just adds so much natural like room sound to it. The Sound City Studios reverb plugin is so good. Like if that makes you can record drums in the deadest of dead sounding rooms and that just sounds so good. Real quick, let's go over the room mic. All I have is a basic EQ on it. That's it. High pass around 300, low pass around 4.8. Took out a little bit of mud, and let's hear what the room sounds like. Raw, and then I'll turn on the EQ. All right, so there is the room sound. Now, real quick, let's go to guitar, vocal, and instrument busing. So the guitars, I have a multi-band compressor going from 500 hertz and below, and it just activates when the guitars are doing the chugs, like da 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 da. So actually, let's go from these dreams and go down to Barracuda. So this is probably the most apparent where you'll hear this effect. So let's solo the guitar bus, and I'll keep them off, and then I'll turn them on. Right? It's so much smoother sounding. The low end just doesn't like pop out that much. And I like that. So the vocal bus. I have two instances of multi-band and full band compression. So I have the SSL bus comp, fast attack auto release at ratio 4. This is just for when they sing together. Just so the vocal is like really nice and thick, glued together. And then there's a build-up between 200 and 1K. This just this multi-band compressor just like helps tame it. So I'll have them off and then I'll turn them on.
Every second of the night, I live another life. These dreams asleep when it's every second of the night, I live another
All right, we're coming down to the wire here, guys. If you're watching this whole thing through now, you're a trooper. So let's go to the instrument bus. I learned this from Streaky. So I give credit to Streaky for showing me this little trick. So this is the main reason why I bought the Pro Q3. So what you do essentially on the instrument bus is you put a Pro Q3 and you EQ match the vocal bus. You delete everything below 100 hertz. You delete everything that's below the band here. And then you take whatever frequencies are left here, make them a tight Q, bring them down to 0, and then turn these 3 frequencies, or however many frequencies there are, into dynamic EQs that activate when the vocal bus hits. So that these 3 frequencies, essentially, what I'm trying to say are, these 3 frequencies are tiny little multiband compressors, essentially, when the vocals hit. And this just helps the vocals cut through just a tiny, tiny bit more. That way, I don't have to raise the vocal bus so the vocals are just sitting above everything. This helps the vocals just blend in more. So you're going to need to listen to this on really nice headphones or speakers to hear this. So just please listen on a good source. So I'm going to play without it and then with it. It's so subtle of a difference, but it makes a difference. So, okay, we are down to the mix bus processing part of this. So, let's bring it back to the song that we were originally working on, which is Alone. I'm going to turn everything off, and then I'm going to play. Hopefully, I don't get copyright tagged. I'll play at least until this point when both of them come in and sing. So I'm going to turn everything off, and then I'm going to turn everything on so you can hear the difference. So here's everything off. What can I say? That is just an unbelievable difference from raw to processed. Now, let's go to the part where a lot of you are going to be wondering what I did as far as mastering goes. So I don't send my mixes out to a mastering engineer, mostly because I'm too fucking broke to do it. Also, if I'm mixing it, I'm going to get it to sound as good as it possibly can in the mixing process so that I have to do very little in the mastering process to just make it, ready to stream and shit. So, my mix bus order of everything. I start with the native bus comp, 30 attack, auto release, 4 ratio, and I'm going between roughly right here around 2 to 3 reduction. And next is a very important plugin that I've very recently purchased, and this makes a huge difference in the overall tone and sound. which is the SPL Vitalizer. I have the bass set between, let's call this 1, 2, and 3. Let's zoom in a little bit here. 1, 2, and 3 on tight setting. Compression, I have this just so this turns on when there's a kick drum hit. And even then, not every kick drum hit. I want this barely on. Mid-high tune and process. I always put the process in the middle of 10. And then, depending on the song, the band, whatever, I fuck with this knob and this knob until it sounds good. So, the LCEQ, I have it on 12 intensity. Again, I keep it in the middle. And again, I just fuck with this until it sounds good. Stereo expander. This basically widens the mix a little bit more. I have it on 4. And this, it just makes it sonically sound pleasing. Next is my absolute favorite compressor in my mastering chain that I've ever used, plug-in wise. This is the Capital Mastering Valve Compressor from UAD. I have slow attack, fast release, and I have it just so it's reducing it by half to 1 dB gain reduction. But here's what I also do at the end here. I turn on the saturator. This is an analog saturator, and I bring it up to 25%. It just adds warmth, character, and it makes it a little spicy. It's like putting some cayenne pepper in your soup or putting it in a sauce, and it just adds that little bit of spice. And then let's get to the workhorse of my entire mastering chain, which is Ozone. So this is Ozone 11 Advanced, and it's not cheap, but it is worth every fucking penny that you would ever spend on it. So let's start from the beginning. Let's actually turn off everything so that you can hear everything one by one as I turn it on. So equalizer. This is just a... didn't want to do that. This is a high-pass and low-pass filter. That's it. I have it set around 17 or 13.5. And I have this set at 30 hertz. Next is clarity. Again, I bring this up from 300, bring it up in amount until it sounds good. In this case, it's 25. Impact. This is a neat little tool where if you select the frequency bands, if you bring the knob down, it compresses. If you bring it up, it expands it. So I expanded the sub lows a little bit, and I took out and I compressed a little bit of the mud right here. Didn't really need to do much with the other 2 frequency bands here. Imager, stereo width. So 100 hertz below, completely pan center, force everything through the center. I don't want the bass going over here, over here. I want this to sound where all the bass is in the direct center of the stereo field. Same from 300, around 360 to 100. A little bit more like pan center. And then on the high end from 1.8 all the way up, I'm expanding it a little bit. Next is stabilizer. I set the setting to rock, set it to shape, and the witchcraft and wizardry Harry Potter's this, so if I just boost the amount, it will just make it sound better. This works a lot like the Custom Series Lift from the Slate Virtual Mix Rack. You just set it, and you just boost it until it sounds good. It's amazing. Next is Dynamic EQ, and this basically acts like a multi-band compressor in EQ form, and I have just a little bit at 190 minus 1 dB just to like polish off that area. And then finally is a maximizer, aka make everything fucking loud. I have it set to IRC4 Modern, boosting at 4.5 dB. Output level is minus 0.3 dB at true peak limiting. I am upward compressing 1.5 dB, and transient emphasis bringing it up to 100, or 98, whatever. It's up at 100%. You know, because someone's going to say something. Now someone's going to say something if it's 101. So 100%. And I want to master towards minus 11 LUFS. Now, there's a whole conversation and debate that audio YouTube has as far as how loud should shit be. The way I like to approach it is I master until it's loud enough where it sounds awesome and before it distorts. So if that's at minus 10, minus 9, so be it. All I know is if you put this on Spotify, they lower it to minus 14, I think, or minus 12. Like, it's one of those two. So if you put this on Spotify, they'll reduce it anyway if it's too loud. So Spotify's going to do it anyway. So I don't even pay attention to that. I make it loud enough so that it sounds loud. I compare it to other mixes that I like, and I just match it based on that, and I base off that by ear. So whatever sounds good to me. So, okay. Let's bring it to when everything comes in, all the instruments are playing, and now I'm going to turn everything on one by one so that you hear everything. And again, you are going to hear a volume jump when I get to the maximizer and the limiter. She'll just forewarn you, the volume's going to spike. That's it, guys. That is my entire mix settings for this particular live set. And in my own opinion, just based on all my years of work here, this is by far the best sounding multi-track live mix of any band I've ever tracked. It just sounds so good. And if you want to hear the full version of Alone, it's in the description. The link to my SoundCloud profile where you can listen to the whole thing in context and in lossless wave quality. So that's it. I want to thank Dream of the Archer for, again, letting me do this gig for them. This is all the way back in April that this was recorded. So, again, Dream of the Archer, amazing band, incredibly talented musicians. And Miranda and Jennifer, just holy shit, what amazing female vocals. So that's it, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something, to quote Louis Rossman. And that's it. See you in the next one. Bye.